Welcome to the webinar. In this webinar, we're going to talk about perfectionism. My intention for you is to understand how perfectionism starts, how it shows up in our lives, and how it creates problems. Perfectionism is insidious. It looks like a good thing, but in the end, it leads to burnout. At the end of this webinar, I'll lay out several things you can do to lessen the perfectionism in your life and also reduce burnout. Okay, then let's move on. What exactly is perfectionism? Perfectionism is the refusal to accept anything short of perfect. Sounds like a recipe for disaster, doesn't it? More importantly, though, what does it look like for you? How is perfectionism showing up in your life? There's the external things, the nice car, the beautiful home, the accomplished children, the fabulous vacation. All of these things make us appear perfect. And just to clarify here, I am not minimizing any of these things. There is nothing wrong with wanting these things. I want them too. The problem shows up when perfectionism starts working in the background of our lives, when it sneaks in, when it operates on an unconscious level. Let me give you a few examples of this. To start with, we have the shoulds. The shoulds occur when the word shows up in the bulk of your conversations. I should be doing more of this, less of that. It sounds innocuous, but it's not. Usually there's an unconscious subtext involved. Here's an example. I should call my mother more often. Sounds loving, right? But the subtext is anything but loving. Often the message is, I'm a bad daughter because I don't call her enough. I'm selfish. I'm letting down the people who need me the most. We call this shoulding on ourselves. Look out for the shoulds. Another way perfectionism shows up is increased defensiveness. This might look like increased sensitivity to things that don't normally bother you. Have you ever started crying because of an offhand comment made by your best friend? Maybe you snapped at your husband because he insulted you by asking you where you put the car keys. This kind of sensitivity, defensiveness, it goes hand in hand with perfectionism. Oh, and then there's procrastination. This is one of my finest talents. Do you ever procrastinate just getting a project started? I'm not even talking big projects. Sometimes the laundry's enough to put me in a tailspin. When we're locked in the pursuit of perfectionism, we get so wrapped up in doing it right that we dissolve into overwhelm just thinking about the project. Overwhelm feels bad, and it also stops us from any sort of effective action. I have about 10,000 digitalized photos that I want to organize. It is my goal and desire to label every one of these photos and then do, I don't even know what with them. So every time I sit down to start this project, I start looking for all sorts of software to help me get rid of the duplicates. Software that'll help me rank the photos and categorize them according to quality. I don't even know. Inevitably, I will buy one of these software programs because if I'm going to do this project, I'm going to do it right. Then I spend hours learning the program, and still nothing has been done with the photo project, except I've likely duplicated 10,000 photos because, God forbid, I lose any of them. Well, after an hour or so, I give up. I go to the refrigerator. There's a Diet Coke and some guacamole waiting for me, and you can see the cycle. Because I want to do the project perfectly, it never gets done. Perfectionism also shows up as having unrealistic standards. We think we can do it all because, quite honestly, I've seen some of y'all's resumes, and you have done it all. But on a daily basis, it gets to be exhausting, doesn't it? Sometimes it's just about us. Say, I'm going to lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks. And that's hard enough. But sometimes these expectations spill over to other people, like our children, our partners. Maybe we expect them to perform academically or athletically to a level they aren't ready. Maybe we expect our partners to be able to read our minds. Sometimes perfectionism can hide in our lives as being hypercritical. This looks like maybe being just a little too critical of everyone around us. A lot of fault finding happens here. This is one of my personal triggers. I know that I'm starting to swim in the shame sea when I'm criticizing my friends and family. I'm also aware that when I'm criticizing others, it's usually a projection of negative feelings I'm having about myself. We don't feel like we're measuring up to the perfectionistic standards that we've set. But the shame from this thought, the thought that we aren't measuring up, is way too painful to feel and to process. So what do? We project it onto other people, and it looks like criticism. There's an even more subtle definition of perfectionism. It's the belief that we have to behave or look a certain way so that nobody will criticize us or blame us. And maybe you say you don't care about criticism, but is that really true? Because when you think about it, criticism feels bad. But that's okay, it's not your fault. If you're a woman, I bet this image resonates with you. We're taught from a young age to fit in, to seek approval and validation. If you're socialized as a man, the pressure came in a different package. Be strong, lead, achieve, never fail, never show vulnerability. It starts really young. The child hears these messages. She's in the gifted class. He's good at math. And then the child starts to believe on some level that their value is derived because they're achieving. The message is this: I'm important and loved because I'm the best at what I do. Then there's a message that we're not really aware of, and this has to do with the primitive brain. This brain is concerned only with survival. The primitive brain has one job: it's to keep you safe from threats so you can reproduce. The primitive brain hears, I am protected and I am safe because I continue to be the best. It's an evolutionary adaptation. It's brilliant. As long as you're perfect, you'll stay alive. Imperfection is the same thing as vulnerability. And to our primitive brain, vulnerability is death. Okay then, now you know where perfectionism comes from. Now you know what it looks like, but you're still exhausted. You're going to ask me, what does this have to do with burnout? How can I feel better? How can I stop being such a perfectionist? There's a lot of theories, a lot of research happening today around burnout, but I'm going to do a real simplified version for you here. Keep it short. You're welcome. When your workload exceeds your capacity to complete the work, then you start to burn out. It's not rocket science. There's too much work, there's not enough time, you're going to be exhausted. That's theoretical. What's it look like for you? Maybe you have corporate requirements that you see 10 to 15 patients in an hour. Maybe you're an ICU worker and you're having to don personal protective equipment every time you enter a room. That's got to be exhausting. For me as an anesthesiologist, it was having unscheduled add-on cases late in the afternoons or the evenings. No matter what area of healthcare you're in, you probably work with some toxic people. Narcissism is rampant in the healthcare industry. And this kind of abuse is exhausting. The second piece in this Venn diagram is family and relationships. And whenever we talk about family and relationships, there's going to be some tricky areas to navigate. What might this look like for you? Are you canceling date nights more and more frequently? Do you and your partner have a strong, solid relationship, or are you living more like roommates? Maybe you're staying up late at night just to get your charting done, or maybe it's your partner that's doing that. And then there's the issue of sex. Is sex something that you enjoy with your partner, or is it something that you reserve for holidays and birthdays? And then you're too tired on holidays and birthdays. The third area that suffers with burnout is your personal life. Not that sex isn't your personal life. Are you getting what you need? Do you have enough time for yourself? Are you doing things that you enjoy? Things that you loved when you were a child? Hiking, camping, cooking, hanging out with friends. Do you have enough time to reflect for self-growth, for personal growth, spirituality? What is it you like to do? What is it that makes your heart sing? Do you even remember? The problem really escalates when one or more of these areas become significantly out of balance. Maybe you have an administrator at work that's creating problems for you. Or your relationship is starting to deteriorate. You're talking about a divorce. Maybe you're just not getting any time to yourself, no sleep, no exercise. And that's when the pressure starts to build, when burnout starts to show, and when we have a problem. So, burnout, that's the thing. Are you there yet? How will you know? Typical symptoms include feeling chronically exhausted, irritable, afraid. Some people become more cynical, others more forgetful and anxious. These feelings, they simmer slowly, or for some people, they just show up overnight. It surprises us. Burnout can look like increased drinking, decreased salaries. Burnout can show up as relationship strain, emotional abuse, divorce. With burnout, we begin to feel hopeless, powerless. We no longer believe we can actually make changes in our own lives or in our patients' lives. We wonder if our work is making any difference at all. Does this resonate? Do you believe that nobody respects what you do? It sounds pretty dire. And you know what? It is. How long has this been going on for you? How much longer until you take definitive action? When exactly are the reinforcements coming in? Okay then, so you ask, what's going to help me? Well, there's a lot of good things. First off, most people try psychotherapy. Talking to a therapist, it's a great idea. You get a lot of great insight into why you're feeling burned out and all the factors that contributed to it. The problem after that is, you know you're burned out, you know why you're burned out, but what are you supposed to do? Now what? You can also go to seminars and conferences. I got a whole list of them because I've been to a lot of them. There's seminars on burnout, there's seminars on being a brave physician. It's just when you get back home, the same question pops up. Now what? What do I do with this information? How do I integrate it into my life? A lot of books on burnout. It's a big topic right now. You can shift careers. You can go non-clinical career. Here's the deal with that. I would recommend considering it as a later or a last resort because the problems that you're having now that are creating the burnout will follow you into the next position. They'll just look a little bit different. Of course, it's very important to talk it out. There's mentors. Talk to your spouse. Talk to your friends. Talk to anybody who will listen. It's important to stay connected to the people you love. It's also important not to burn out the people you love. Something happens when we talk to our partners about burnout. They want to understand. They love us. They want to help. It's just, they don't quite get it. They don't quite understand what we're going through. There's a lot of online help available. Facebook groups for one. You get in a Facebook group, you find your people, you feel validated. The only issue is they're not really able to solve your problems. They're not able to specifically work with you to figure out what's going on with you. LinkedIn has great career advice, a lot of great podcasts, YouTube videos. All these things are helpful. I love mindfulness work. There's nervous system work, meditation, very powerful, so important to slow down. And then there's physical movement, rev it back up. All of this is good. All of this is helpful. And it doesn't solve the problem of what's going on with you. You are unique. Your triggers are unique. The issues surrounding you are unique. They need special attention. So, now what? Well, you're probably thinking, I don't even know where to start. Let's try a new perspective here. You've tried all sorts of things, Facebook, podcasts, YouTube videos, therapy, and although everything's helping a little bit, you're still finding that you're struggling with perfectionism or maybe just flat out burnout. Maybe you're at the point where you think, if I can just white knuckle it a little bit longer, things will get better. How long have you been thinking that? How much has it cost you to think that? And I'm not talking financially. I'm talking about losses in other areas. What areas are you not connecting in? Are there things that you're missing out on? What's it going to take for you to make this better, to step in and do something about it. Okay then, how does this work? Coaching is future focused. We look at where you are now, where you want to be, and we find a way to get you there. All great athletes have coaches. All great musicians have coaches. All great students have coaches. Why shouldn't all great healthcare professionals have coaches? So the best way to start this is with a 1-hour complimentary session, and you can sign up for this session right here on the webinar. In this session, we'll talk about what's going on for you, where you are right now, where you want to be, and then we'll figure out how to get you there. During this session, you can see what it might be like to work with me, and you can see if coaching's a fit for you. So the webinar is almost finished, but before we go, I did want to give you a few kind of tips or tricks to help you handle perfectionism, to help you deal with perfectionism so you can minimize it in your life. The first thing to do is recognize it. Look for patterns in your life that seem to be revolving around perfectionism. What does it look like for you? Is it a bunch of shoulds? Are you more defensive than you usually are? Do you find yourself procrastinating? Are you setting unrealistic standards? And are you more critical of others than you normally are? These are all indicators that you're starting to kind of get sucked into that perfectionism vortex. So pay attention to that. Once you see these patterns, pause and evaluate it. Ask yourself as kindly as possible, hey, what's going on here? And then I want you to do something else. I want you to ask yourself, what's really going on here? Look for the emotion that shows up. There's a good chance that it's going to be fear or guilt or shame. If it's not one of those, it's going to be something related like anger, anxiety, disgust. Go ahead and experience the emotion. Emotions can feel bad. They can feel great, but they can feel bad. But they're not going to kill you. They're not even going to hurt you. They're not to be feared. They're to be processed. This is something that coaching is so great for. It helps you process that emotion. Another thing to do is to really practice self-kindness. I know it sounds simple, but it's okay to stop beating yourself up. In fact, it's an excellent idea. So start with self-compassion. Use the kindest words possible so that you still believe them. You know, people think that being kind to themselves makes them weak. But on the contrary, being kind to yourself is an act of courage. It's a show of extraordinary strength. It's vision. For example, if you can't say, oh, I'm so proud of myself, I've accomplished remarkable goals in my life, then say to yourself, I've accomplished goals in my life. Because it's true, right? Here you are listening to this. Say things to your brain that are believable. And then over time, build on that. Build the positive energy. We do this in coaching. And it's so nice to have a coach who's always got your back, really helping you build on these great things about you. Things you want to believe, things you know are there, things you've been out of touch with for a while. I want you to remember the concept of common humanity. In other words, you're not alone. What you're experiencing with this perfectionism is part of being human. All of us struggle. None of us are perfect, not even close. So many of the examples I give on the webinar are my personal examples. Remember this. It's okay to be imperfect. It's a good thing. Believe that. I also think it's critical to get an outside perspective. Talk about it. Talk to your friends who can meet you with empathy. And you and I both know not all of your friends can do that. That's okay. Find the friend that can meet you with empathy. Find the family member who can hold space for you. Talk to a coach or a therapist about this. We're trained to help you recognize and disassemble these patterns so you can create a life on your own terms. I'd love to meet you. I appreciate that you stayed through this entire webinar, and if you think this might be something that'll work for you, please reach out. Go ahead and click that link, and we'll be in touch. Okay, have a great week.
Walk with me. Let's leave the past behind. Walk with me. There's something else we need to find. Say you'll go